You're listening to Boobies and Newbies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Welcome to Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today's episode marks our first book review in the month of August. A month so hot, so sweaty, and so sticky that only one theme seemed appropriate: rock out with your, you know. That's right. All month long, we'll be reading and reviewing rock star romances, culminating in our IG Live book club discussion of BB Reed's Lilac on August 25th. Be sure to follow Boobies and Newbies on social media at Boobies Podcast to stay up to date with what's going on in and around the world of romance. Also, you can check out any of our old, new, everywhere in between episodes on boobiesandnewbies.com. And if you want to show the podcast a little extra love, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/boobiespodcast. I actually just recently updated our patron tier rewards, so there's a lot of great bonus swag, listening material, and lots more coming your way soon. But that's enough business for now. Let us get down to the romance. Joining me today is Liz Serna, a co-host of the hilariously entertaining podcast Nerdy Bitches, in which two geeky ladies podcast their way through pop culture. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you. I have been waiting to be on your show for a super long time.
I'm kind of amazed that it's taken this long, honestly. I honestly think that I previously thought you had already been on the show and we had just done an episode or three, and yet here we are recording our first, and you, I know, are no newbie to romance.
I am not, and I think that's why I was like, okay, maybe she'll have an episode where a newbie doesn't have to be a newbie, and that would be great because I'm a newbie to this author. So does that count? So,
yes. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, we're all newbies to something in the world of romance, even when you've been reading romance as long as I have. There's always something new, and this author was a new to me author as well, which I'm always trying to read more of. But you're an author too.
I'm working on it anyway. I have written a book. I have not published it yet, but I am, fingers crossed, hopeful. It is not a romance. It's actually sort of an anti-romance.
Love it.
Yeah, my book is actually it's a hilarious look back at my first marriage, the red flags that I missed or ignored along the way, and our eventual divorce, and my own personal liberation and transformation into the self-saving princess, which is my blog and brand that I started before we did Nerdy Bitches, and about making your own happily ever after once life has kicked you in the nuts. So
yes, or the ovaries,
the lady nuts, whatever it is, whatever you got that kicked you in the lower parts,
the lower thirds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I love it. Well, tell everybody about Nerdy Bitches, because I, for one, love nerdy things, and hence I like your podcast a lot. So let's hear it.
So Nerdy Bitches is me and my friend Heather, and we have been friends for, 12 years or whatever. And we started doing this podcast because we found, at the time, there were not a lot of podcasts by women when we first started. And we used to call ourselves the grandmas of podcasting, but another podcast host told us that we were the hot aunts of podcasting. And you know what? I will take that all day long. So our show is in its 6th year. We have over 200 episodes. You know, we're a little slow sometimes, but that's okay because we have lives and you have to do the thing.
That's an accomplishment
huge.
In and of itself, though, to be still going after 6 years and have over 200 episodes.
We've seen so many people come and go in that time.
Yeah.
People who had much flashier situations, but we love what we do. We talk about fandoms, and we actually consider nerdy, the word nerd, to be passionate fandom. So anybody can be nerdy with anything. Heather is, she does, I don't know, business stuff at her stuff. So she's like a big statistics geek. So that's it.
Love
She's
it.
like flipping her maths on the corners for dollars. Like she loves it. She loves that kind of stuff. I am a big nerd. I am a giant reader. You and I have talked about this. You know, I read 150, 200 books a year.
We're the book nerds.
Yeah, we have a book club as a part of Nerdy Bitches as well. And I run a page through Facebook where we have over 100 people in there who also love books, who come together to talk about what they're reading and if they like it, problematic things, and just fun book stuff. It's just a place to really, you know, love what we love and not be ashamed of it ever. So that's the thing.
No.
Like my first husband that I write about in my book was a jock, but he was a sports nerd. That was the thing. Like,
so I was going to say, so he was a nerd about
sports, but he was also a dick about nerd stuff. So, you know, that's one thing that I don't like about the nerd community in general, is that a lot of people who were teased or beaten up or bullied as kids for the things that they like that have now become a lot more mainstream. Like when we were kids, everybody kind of loved Star Wars, but not everybody loved Star Trek. And like you might get teased or you might get, you know, beat up or whatever. But now those same people have become weirdo gatekeepers, and they're these weirdo incel dudes who just want to sit around and say women can't game. It's like, then you don't know what gaming is, because women fucking game all the time, and they have since the beginning.
Right.
We have whole episodes about video gaming and how, you know, the market switched because the toy aisles went pink and blue somewhere in the mid 80s. And so there's a lot of stuff we talk about. We talk high level stuff and we talk gutter trash stuff as well. So, you know, we try to be a little bit of everything for anyone. So
that's interesting, though, that you mentioned the whole idea about like the, you know, like the bullied becoming the gatekeepers sort of thing, because I feel like, I don't think it's exactly the same thing, but I think there is something similar within the book community as well as like specifically the romance community. Like I talk a lot on the podcast about how much I love the romance community, and it's true. I do. I think we have an awesome group of authors and book bloggers and podcasters, and 95% of them want to lift up each other's voices.
Yes.
They want to, you know, if podcasters are promoting other podcasters and bloggers are promoting authors and other authors are promoting other authors, like I love it. My experiences have almost all been very positive. However, I will say I do think, especially in the last few months, there's it'll pop up on Twitter like every once in a while about this like unspoken rule where if you're somebody who's reviewing a book, you have to be giving it like a 5-star review. Otherwise, the author will call you out. And you know, and it's not just like blogger to author. There's been a lot of, I've seen it with a couple podcasters as well. Like there just seems to be some sort of gatekeeping or like expectations of like what hierarchy exists within the romance world as well as like the book world. Is like, well, you can read all this and talk about this, but when it comes to this specific author, you can't say anything negative about their books you know.
Yeah, I read a lot, and I do give stars and stuff when I'm rating and reviewing. And honestly, unless I really hate a book, like I have my own system of way that I do it. So if I finish a book, it usually gets, if I finish a book and didn't care for it, but I actually finish it, I will give it like a 3-star kind of situation.
Yeah.
But I don't write trash about anybody, because one, I don't take the time and I've already forgotten it by the time I end the first page. I could just barely get to that star rating because I'm like, what did I read? I don't remember. But I have to take notes along the way if I'm going to write an actual review, which I have a book, like a journal that I bought to actually review stuff. But I only got through like the first 60 books I've read this year, because I'm already up to like 90 something. And then you have to go back and remember. So it's like hot trash. I don't know.
Right.
But, you know, and then I don't know. Like, unless I really didn't like a book, I will usually give it a 4 or 5-star rating. But I don't go crazy on it. If I do not like a book, I don't rate it. on Goodreads.
That's the same.
Because I don't feel like I need, it's the same thing with podcasts, right? Like, so we have gotten, I would say 99% of the podcast ratings that we have through Apple Podcast or Podchaser or whatever are 5-star ratings. And someone has left a review that says, I like it. We got one last week. I love the ones that we get, especially because we are a lady podcast that is dudes who listen. And a lot of like 70% of our listeners are actually male, which is unexpected, but also awesome. And we don't get a lot of evil trolls coming after us, which is also
good,
unexpected and awesome. I think we're like the Cosmo magazine of podcasts, where they can like sneak behind the veil and find out lady tips. And but we're like, we're not threatening. We're not, whatever. So I mean, I think if I look at it, we've maybe had like one or 2-star review, but nobody writes a post. Like somebody was probably just like, you've got a vagina and you're talking, and they go, give me a 1.
You get like, 1 star.
Go fuck yourself. This is also why we don't engage with trolls, because I know that behavior,
it's not worth it.
I'm a psychologist. Yeah. Like, I'm just not interested in bandering with morons. Like, it's just not. I'm not going to get any benefit out of it. That's why I had to divorce my ex-husband. You're just
gonna feel worse. Like, it's not going to make you feel better.
No. And also, I have found that a lot of these people have these like narcissistic tendencies where they need the attention. And the 100% best way to ruin a narcissist's day is to ignore them completely.
Absolutely.
Never, ever engage, because everything you say and do will get flipped to where they're the victim. So the only thing you can do is ignore them completely and deprive them of the attention that they feed off of, and they will starve. And it's amazing. I've been divorced for 12 years, and my ex is still emailing me on an almost daily basis, begging me to talk to him. But I do not, because it's the greatest thing in my life to be like, delete, fucker. And everyone's like, why don't you just ignore him? I'm like, because he lives not that far. So if I have to keep one channel to where I can see where he is, like I have to see him coming, because if I totally block him, he just might show up at the door. You never know.
And you know what? I've heard them talk about that on my girls who do My Worst Date podcast. Yeah. They've talked about that as well, where it's like, it's almost better to like kind of keep track of like what's going on with an ex, and like as opposed to just like writing them off altogether and not knowing when and where they could pop back up in your life.
I got out of that relationship not to ruin his life, but to take control of mine,
of yours,
and not be the horrible screaming banshee witch that I was when I was married to him. I was like, I don't like that. That's not who I am. My current husband I've been married to for almost 10 years. I don't think we've ever yelled at each other ever. I'm not even kidding, because I told him when we got together, I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm not either. There's nothing I care about enough anymore to fight over. If it's going to be that much of a sticking point, I'm done. Like it sounds like heartless and cold, but I went through 11 years of hell that I'm not going to go through again.
Well,
ever.
No, but honestly, I mean, I totally understand that, because I mean, I, for one, I've been staying at my parents' place while I've been gearing up for my move. And the amount of times that I've heard them fight or argue over the dumbest thing, like, and that's the thing, is it's never like the worthwhile topics, because I feel like when those come up, like the deal breakers, the worthwhile stuff, the things that make a difference, those are the ones that people will call it quits on. They'll be like, oh, well, we have such a difference of opinion when it comes to this specific thing that's so important to each of us, and neither of us are going to change our minds. Yep. It doesn't make any sense for us to be together. I mean, there's a difference between opposites attracting and like people attracting who have conflicting opposite ideals.
And that's the difference between a normal couple that will say, we are incompatible, and being married to someone with narcissistic tendencies, which we actually see come up in this book. So this is not a total aside.
I'm so glad you tied
that
in.
It's not a total aside. This comes up in this book. And this, for me, I like made notes on this shit, because I was like, I am so attacked right here. It's ridiculous. But this is one of the things, because my ex and we were 100% wrong for each other. And the only reason we lasted as long as we did is because I'm an idiot that like drives life off of spite, and I will do the dumbest shit in the world that only hurts me to not be wrong. And this is the mindset I had to change, because when you live with somebody like this, they change who you are.
Right.
We've been divorced for 12 years. It's not as bad now, obviously, because I have actually grown and healed. And I will tell you, writing my book this past year, I've written it, but it was crap. So I rewrote it and wrote another book on top of it, where I'm like literally Monday morning quarterbacking my entire relationship. So I'll tell the story. And then there's a note that says, please note right here, I'm an asshole. Or, wow, look how fucking stupid I was at this. Red flag on fire at night, dum-dum. Like, there's it's a humor book. I fought a long time to try to figure out, like, where does this fit? Is it relationship? Is it self-help? Is it, what is it? Is it memoir? Nobody cares who I am. It can't be a straight memoir. I'm not anybody yet, but it's I'm like, this is a humor book.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like Jenny Lawson and Mark Manson, like these are people Sarah Knight, who write these kind of satirical self-help books. This is what I want. I am a person who brings uncomfortable truths and swear words to everything that I do.
Humor and healing. Like, I mean, I feel like healing through humor, like, which is such a, I mean, that's such a, I don't want to say a defense mechanism, but that's something that so many of us do. Like, I know I had one of my favorite, like, English teachers I had in high school. She would tell us, like, well, the best way to, like, define comedy is tragedy plus time. Like, it's literally just taking the time to process the bad shit that's happened and then looking back on it and going, ha 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 ha, that was so stupid.
Carrie Fisher says that like time plus trauma is like location. That's it. You move the trauma. And I have people that I have known my entire life, but I like hadn't seen since high school. They friend you on Facebook, and you follow me on Facebook. I'm funny on Facebook because I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about my bullshit. And I talk about the stuff that no one else is talking about.
And I know this might seem like so off topic, but honestly, this is basically the perfect way to like set up the book we're talking about, because this is sort of where our heroine is at the beginning of the story. Like, she is coming out of I will issue like a trigger warning. Like, there is like a moment of like physical abuse in the very first chapter. And then she gets the, fuck out of there. But the more we hear about her relationship with her ex-husband, the more we're like, oh my God, this man has been gaslighting her and like emotionally abusing her for years. And so, I mean, it really does. And then we get to see her healing. We get to see her like getting out of there and starting fresh. And what does that look like starting, when you're still young? I mean, she's 26 years old. But really, you feel like you've lived the life of like somebody in their 40s or 50s, and you're trying to like reacclimate to being a 26-year-old on tour with a rock star. So, I mean, it really is a great way to set up sort of where this book begins. And I guess I should tell everybody that the book we are talking about today is Built to Fall by Julia Wolf. And as I mentioned, and Liz did too, this is a new to us author. And this contemporary romance was published in January of just this year, 2021. Oh. It's available on Amazon for free with Kindle Unlimited, although I actually received a paperback copy in my romance happy hour book box. Nice. So they do different themed book boxes every month, and I was a ambassador for them for like the first half of the year. And so this came in my rock star bundle, and I was taken back the very first time I saw the cover of this book, because I was like, there is a silver fox tattooed man on the cover. And it's not often you get to see graying hair on covers in general. So that alone was like enough to entice me to like want to read this.
I was very intrigued by the title or the cover as well. But I think I have a very different response to how the aging is happening in this book and what they're talking about, because the age difference between Claire and Dominic is
16 years.
For her, it's very significant. And the way that they talk about him is like he's 400 years old. He is 42.
He's 42. And like, if you're looking at this dude as like your comparison, like you're thinking this is
hot,
Dominic.
you know?
This, yeah. I mean, this is, it doesn't matter how old he is on this cover.
No. He's hot, but here's the thing. He's 42 years old, and they go, I have so many notes in here about, like, she makes a comment. I hope you don't mind if I hit this here.
No, go for it.
Okay, so she makes this comment that says, I've never found a man with salt and pepper hair attractive, but Dominic made it work. Because I had been a fan for a long time, I knew he had gone gray prematurely. The hair on top of his head was almost white, and his beard was streaked with silver, the same black of his eyebrows. And I'm just like reading this, and I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm 44, so I'm older than this guy. And I'm like, could you please stop talking about him like he's Grandpa fucking Moses? Because, oh my God.
There's a couple times, like there's one time where somebody mentions to her that what's the friend that works for him? Is it Martha? Yeah. Marta. She like mentions like, oh, you know, like he could be your dad, like if he had you when he was like a teenager.
I wrote that down too. I was like, bleh.
Yeah. And then the other one was that she's like, I never found like my parents' age attractive, but he's closer to my parents' age than my age. And like, I'll call him daddy kind of. And I was just like, ooh, okay. Like, you know, and so I'm with you. There were definitely a lot of references to the age gap. And
yeah,
look, I'm not opposed to an age gap. And like, again, when it's put into context for me, like the fact that she was married at like 21, she's getting divorced at 26. She's lived a very different life than a lot of 26-year-olds have. I feel like emotionally that ages you so much more. And so to me, it didn't make a difference.
Yeah. The type of relationship that she was in as well. Also, This is not a young puppy love and you're having fun times and doing young things. This is, you are being groomed and you are being like forced into a certain role at a very young age. And so when you come out of it, you're definitely fighting with, who am I? What am I beyond what that was? And how do I move forward? So it does age you. And I will say that when I was probably 19 or 20, because I met my ex-husband when I was 21. So I was 19 or 20, and I would be talking to someone, because this was back in AOL days, because that's how old I am, that I met my first husband on AOL, and all the other guys I went out with as well. Yeah. Like we barely had internet, but like, here's your AOL. And so I met this guy, and he was older. He was closer to my parents' age than he was to mine. I was closer to like the age of his kids and that kind of thing. And it is a weird headspace when you're thinking about it at that age. But I'm like, now I'm on the other side of it. And I'm like, oh God, because when I did get divorced, I was 33. When I got my divorce, I was 33. And I went out with a guy that I met on OkCupid back in 1942.
Such a gem.
As you do. And I was on OkCupid for a minute and a half and realized it was nothing but 22-year-old guys looking to hook up. But I met a guy who was 30 years old. And everyone I know is like, you're a cougar, you're robbing the cradle. I was like, he's fucking 30. Like, what? Like,
he's 3 years younger.
Yeah, it's like it's such a weird space to like, because like literally, I'm not even kidding, Kelly. My first husband and I had the same birthday. Same year. We were born 12 minutes apart.
Oh my God.
Yeah, never should have. Like, this should have been, I mean, this was like red flag number one. Like, ridiculously stupid.
From the day we were born, red flag.
Bad. Like, so bad. But my current husband is a month older than I am. So I've never, like, I don't date, like, I literally date the guys that are my age. And so other than talking to these people and having like flirtations or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that's my experience. It's just being with people who are the same age. But you also realize, at least I realized, and maybe this sounds sexist or whatever, men mature differently than women do. And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
You might be 21, but he's 12. So
I mean, and it goes without saying, like, not all men. I mean, it's you know,
it does say that. If you have to say not all men, you are the all men. So,
exactly. But in general, like that's the understanding we have, is that we do mature differently, and women tend to mature both physically and mentally and emotionally quicker than men do. And so, and we see that in this book. I mean, we have 42-year-old Dominic dealing with trauma from 7+ years ago, and just reaching out to get the help he needs now, as opposed to, you know, our heroine Claire, who is a few months fresh from her divorce and already starting the healing process at 26.
Yeah.
So,
but it's also very weird, like, and we'll talk about, like, the way that her healing process kind of tracks through this is through this flirtation and relationship with him. That, again, as someone who has been with the narcissist and someone who has the psychology background, has got some, like, weirdly problematic things. And then I've also been on Kink Talk a lot lately by accident, sort of. Like, it just randomly pops up. And so I'm learning a lot more about that community and how it should be done. Because, again, I read the 50 Shades of Grey back in the day, in the early days of romance reading. You're like, wow, BDSM is weird. Okay,
do not let that be your guide for BDSM.
It is absolutely not. But this book is funny because it has all the markers of those type of relationships and situations, or someone writing about them who maybe isn't super familiar with the lifestyle. And again, I'm not super familiar with it either, but I read a lot, and I've gone, you know, I watch all these weird doms and brats and whatever. And so you're realizing there's, like, a lot of conversation that's supposed to be going on, and a lot of consent type things and negotiations and agreements that have not happened in this book. And there's a lot of biting in this book too. Like,
okay, no, I'm going to put a pin in that because I want to get back to the biting. That was, I will say, there's a lot I really liked about this book, but the biting was something that we'll come back to. But let me give everyone the brief synopsis for this book, and then we will dive into our notes. But once again, this is Built to Fall by Julia Wolf. Here we go. Oh, it starts with a quotation. So here we go. Picture this in the voice of her bitchy PR boss. You're perfect for this job, Claire. He won't want to sleep with you. You're not his type. Ugh, I hate that woman. Dominic
fucking hate her.
She's terrible. Like, first of all, Claire is plus size and, like, curvy and gorgeous, and that's, like, the main basis for this woman being like, you can go work with him because he's not going to want to fuck you. Evil bitch. Anyway, Dominic Cantrell has been famous almost as long as I've been alive, but he remains a dark, volatile mystery. I know why I was hired to handle Dominic's PR while he's on tour. It's not because of my experience. I have next to none. It's because I'm safe. Plain, quiet, shy, with more than ample curves. I won't distract him. What I didn't count on was Dominic distracting me instead. I shouldn't be so drawn to him. He's too old for me, too closed off, and definitely too angry. But I've been a good girl for far too long. Why can't I be just a little bit bad, especially when my rock star fantasy is so willing to corrupt me? Our fling has an expiration date at the end of the tour. No strings, no feelings, no heartbreak when it's over. I tell myself I won't fall, but I don't know if I'm built that way. Okay, I have to say, this is probably just a personal thing, but personally, I do not like synopses that are written in a character's point of view. I very much like the third person, like, this is the person, this is the other person, blah, blah, blah. So right off the bat, not my favorite. However, I do want to say there's a great section at the end of the book in the acknowledgments. Oh, there's also a Spotify playlist that Julia Wolf has put together.
Okay, so now I'm not going to dig on that because I have actually done that for my book as well.
No, I mean, I love a good playlist. Like, and the fact that somebody took the time to put it together. But I really did like in Julia Wolf's acknowledgments, she talks about, the pandemic hit, and because of it, she downloaded TikTok as a way to entertain herself. And ironically, she also found inspiration because the guy that's on the cover for this book is a TikTok creator, and she just fell in love with his look. It inspired this whole story in her head. And so she basically credits the entire book to like the fun and inspiration she found on TikTok, which if that's not the most like 2020 thing ever, like I don't know what is. So I love that. But I will say overall, I actually really enjoyed this book. Like I read this one like cover to cover, sitting down, and I feel like when I sat down to read it, I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. And then there just kept being all these things that would pop up. Like they talk very openly about smoking weed and taking edibles. There's, oh my God, anybody who follows me on Instagram will know how much that I love the fact that they have period sex. Like I was like, oh my God, these are all the things that I'm constantly asking for in books, like the mess, the real life, like people taking drugs and they're also not bad people because they smoke weed. Like there were so many things that made this book so current that I really liked about it. That being said, I could have done without the biting. Again, a personal preference. Look, in the bedroom,
the neck
I feel
grabs too.
Yeah, and like here's the thing is I know everybody has their own. I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum, but there's a difference to me between like you're making out, you're hooking up, and somebody like nibbles on your neck to this dude lifting up her shirt and just like biting the shit out of her.
And like to the point where she's like, I can still see his marks 3 days later. I'm like, that's not sexy. That is a
cannibalistic
assault. That's assault, sir. Like, and I think that's the thing. Like, I actually kind of love that this has this TikTok link to it because I've only been on it a couple weeks, but I've also found these same doms on here that post this shit and it's like the primal kink talk and the growling. I love that shit. Like I'm
discovering things about myself every day while watching it.
Too. I'm like, why does the algorithm keep showing me this? But I have discovered a lot about myself as well. But again, this is where my brain goes to. This is somebody who's kind of maybe, and again, I don't know her. I can't talk about her experience or anyone else's. This is someone who's maybe seen some of this stuff or read about it in other books. And it's like, it is sex. Like the growl is sexy and the up against the wall, like all of the rough stuff. I love dirty talk.
Same.
But sometimes the dirty talk gets weird and it's gross a little bit. Like it's a fine line. There's a real fine line between dirty talk that like is sexy and a huge turn on, and I love it, with something that a creepy incel would say. You know what I mean? Like,
can I give you a line that I've marked? Like, keep in mind, this book is filled with like if you're, I feel like lately we've been reading books for the podcast that end up being a lot less steamy, even some being like completely closed door romances. And so if you're looking for something that's a hot steamy read with like 4 to 5 even more like sex scenes within it, this is a book that fulfills that need. But I will say, I'm here for the dirty talk. I'm with you. There was one line that I could not look past, so I'm curious to see if it's the same one or not. But let me just give you a little context. They're cooking in the kitchen and they're talking about like, oh, we want to cook together. Like, I'll cook you something, you cook me something. I was like, oh my God, how cute. I'm here for it. So he says, here we go. He brought my hands up to his mouth, taking his time to nibble each fingertip. I want to cook. When you say that while biting my fingers, I think you want to cook me. I felt his low chuckle through his back. For once, he didn't try to hide it, but then again, I couldn't see his face. When I eat you, I like you raw.
That is not the same line. However, I also had that exact response to that one because... Again, I see there's like this, I want to go down this primal kink kind of situation where we have the biting and maybe there's a wolf fascination, whatever it is. I don't know. Everybody's got their thing. But the one that gets me, because that was weird. There's a couple of them like that where they're like talking about like, oh, you eat me so good, or you, whatever like that, and it's like
again,
okay,
lot of eating, a lot of biting, a lot of cannibalistic
very
primal oral tendencies.
But the one that got me, that was so again, if it were in a like, I actually really liked this scene, this sexcapade here. It was a really good one. It was when they wake up together for the first time, and there's like that, like ass rubbing on the cock kind of situation. Because that's actually was like one of my favorite things back in the day. You know, like that's the morning. I like the morning situation. Like
I do too.
But they're going through that, and they get to the point where they're going to do something. And he's like, well, you know, like, I have to fuck you. I have to whatever. And you're like, okay, that's great. Sure. but then he says, so basically she's like, he's hurting her somehow. But it's like, the only pain I felt was what he gave me, and I accepted willingly. So that's weird on its own. But just like in the wording, like the wording is a little weird. Right. But then his reply to whatever is happening here is, your pussy is greedy for my cock. And again, I like a good dirty talk, and I don't mind that kind of a situation. But if it were said in a slightly different tone by a weird guy in the corner, it would very much be fucking disgusting. And so again, there's a lot of this that's like written on this fine line of where I'm down for it. And I'm also turned off by it. Like, it's
at
like that was that was a weird thing. Like, I was digging the scene, and then you like say that one weird thing, and you're like, you just made it creepy.
Also, like, I'm again, personal preference, I'm not a huge fan of like personifying body parts. Like, oh, my cock, just like oh, he's up. He really wants you. I'm just like, oh, can we not with this? Like, this is...
I'm like, you're 42. Like, this is not how 42-year-old man talks. This is some,
like, 25-year-old naming your penis, like, you know, death row.
Chad
like,
wants you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Chad. Oh, my God.
It would be Chip. His dick would be named. Not this guy, but, like, a 25-year-old's dick.
Yeah.
It's Chip.
Exactly.
And, but, yeah, there's things... And I also think that in some of the scenes here, because again, I'm down for it. There's good stuff happening, but and this is also something that happens in my brain in any romance novel that I'm listening to or reading. I get really like, my brain triggers on the logistics of how these situations are happening. And again, backstory: my ex-husband's 6'5", I'm 5'3". Things do not line up properly when you have a massive height difference. And so I'm always like, you know, like, oh, she's bent over this way, and he leans over and kisses her, and I'm like, how do you reach her?
Like, do you start playing mechanics like while you're reading, where you're like lifting up your leg and arms
his hands
and stuff?
His hands have her hands by her head, and I'm like, well, what's he holding himself up with? Like, you know, and unfortunately, that's a part with some authors when the way they write. They're so caught up in trying to give you the visual picture that I am now playing Twister in my head, trying to figure out what is happening with the. I don't know. So
I actually saw somebody comment that recently on whether it was like an author's tweet or some, and it was an author talking about their book, like promoting the book. And all the people commenting were like, oh my God, I love this book, or I love this, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody commented, not in a mean way, but just in a way where I'm like, haha, I get what you're saying. And was like, was I the only one trying to picture how certain things were working out in certain scenes? Because it did make sense. We've talked about this on the show. It always happens to me when it's car sex. Like anytime people are hooking up in a car,
especially
like,
a truck. Especially
I'm just like, where's your leg? Where's your leg? Like, where is your head crammed up sideways? Like, what?
I've tried to have sex in a truck before, and it sucks. It's the worst.
Good.
It is nothing good about it. There's a steering wheel in the way, doors. It is not. Again, it is not good. I'm thinking about like, how far back does that car seats lean, and what's the angle is weird. I get where they're going. They're trying to do interesting things that haven't been done. But again, go try it. Like one
Yes.
of my favorite romance authors is Melissa Foster. I don't know if you've read any of her
I
stuff.
love Melissa Foster.
Her. I've read
Yes.
60 plus of her books.
Oh
Like,
my God.
I have a checklist, Kelly. I have literal list of her books written, like what order, because they're so good. And she writes amazing scenes and stuff, and they're really good. But again, some of them you're like, how does that? But she also has 6 kids, so like I trust her. Like she's tried some. I guarantee she's tried some.
That's how I got number 4.
Well, one of the books she writes is the character, the heroine is a romance novelist. And so she's writing like with the blow up dolls, like she's putting, or she actually has her friends come in and like make out on the floor so she can write and describe like what they're like. And I love that about it because it's hilarious and has to be so true because again, as a writer, I write observational humor, right? I write about my life and weird shit that I see and I cuss a lot and whatever. And I love romance. I'm not a fiction writer, but I 100% have a book in my head that I want to write that's like all the tropes and just what would really happen, like the real life funny shit that would happen, like how many hips get broken during shower sex, like who's falling on the floor in a heap and now you've strained your dick, like what is happening?
I want it. I'm
gonna write this book because it's funny to me and I think there's a market, like I think people would dig that, like that's, it's like the satirical version of the thing that I love because I do like the things. I didn't grow up as a romance reader. My grandma read no romance novels, and I knew that, but I didn't know anything about what was happening in them because all she read was like Fabio flowing on the cover. Yeah. And so I only read contemporary romance and maybe some paranormal. I like werewolves and, vampires and shit. But that's the thing. Like, I really love the way some of this book is written and some of it is cringy.
And I think the way you described it, because as I was reading it, and obviously it starts where Claire is coming off of this terrible marriage, an abusive marriage, and she takes this internship. And for some reason, apparently because she's plus size and plain, her boss is like, well, you can go as the intern manage this rock star that I, by the way, used to be married to, and
this
he
is
won't want to
too. By the way,
he won't want to sleep with you. Like, no problem. But so that's basically the general setup, and then I really liked the team of people. Like we have Dominic, we have his assistant Marta, who ends up eventually getting together with Claire's sister, the like femme lesbian gardener. Like I was like, her. Oh my God, I could have a whole book dedicated to just Marta and Annalise. Like,
I would love. I was hoping that would be like book 2 in whatever. I was too.
Yeah. And then as they once they were introduced, I was like, oh damn it, they're gonna get together in this book. I love it, but I hate it because I wanted more. And then they're touring with this other band with like the one douche nozzle that's like always hitting on Claire. But then there's like a couple other people in the band.
She's a little teasy on that too, which, and not that I'm like, oh, you deserve this. She was like, maybe he's nice, and so guys are dumb. Like you can't expect that,
No,
but she does tell him no, thank you, and he still does things, and he's a dick.
Right.
So the end.
And she says like, look, I think we could be great friends, and he's like. Yeah. Oh, but I want more than that. And she's like, well,
but you should feel my dick because he wants you. And it's like, no, thank you.
I don't really know what to tell you. Like there were a lot of things that I really liked about Claire's character in terms of like, she spoke up for herself. Like she's
sassy for sure.
And even with Dominic, like if something was going on where she's like, look, I don't want you to touch me that way. Or like somebody calls her Claire Bear. She's like, I don't like being called that because that's what my ex-husband called me. Like she was very vocal about like things that she wanted and especially things that she didn't want. And I was impressed with that. Like she doesn't feel like a 26-year-old, which again just kind of like ties back into, our whole discussion about like the age gap not even feeling like an age gap.
Right. Well, you get the age dynamic, which there's always, and I'm not talking like daddy brat kind of situations either.
No.
But just there is an age situation where a lot of times young will defer to older because that's just the power dynamic. We also have, and this is, I was saying, when you're talking about how the boss puts her in this job because she's, you know, a chubby girl who she's plain. She's probably blending in with the furniture. Like that whole thing on the plane in the beginning was like, who the fuck are you, bitch? You literally told her 10 minutes ago how much you liked her and admired her and thought she'd be perfect for this. And now you're talking about how she's blending in with the seat. She's just been in an accident where she could have died.
See her. Like she'll blend in.
She's so plain. And she's like literally in the back going, I was in a car accident and almost died 5 minutes ago, but here I am, bitch. Like, and they're just like talk, and he's like, hey, this is real funny that she's like, they're like total shitty. This whole plane thing was total shitty. There's another book, and it's another rock star book. I don't know if you've read it. Probably have. Empathic. It's one of the Soul Serenade or Emphatic. Sorry, I read it wrong every time.
I've read the Soul Serenade series, so I mean, I
so
must have read it.
Yeah, they're all rock stars, and the first one they're like, we're gonna hire this person based off their resume because the name is Logan, and we need a man. But
I remember
Logan
that
is a woman,
and they had like hooked up on vacation or whatever.
Yeah, they hooked up on vacation, used different names, whatever. And it's a great book. Like, honestly, I've read that series 4 times. And I've read it like 4 times in a row.
Yes, I've read that series too. I liked it.
It's so good. But the thing I have with this is the fact that there's so many men who are just incapable of keeping it in their pants to the point where they will only want to hire a male assistant is problematic in a couple of ways. Because one, it's insulting, or it really should be that like, it should be insulting to the rock star. Like, we know you're fucking stupid and can't get your shit together. So this is what we're going to do. But 2, it's scary because it really brings up so many questions about the consensual nature of a dynamic in any kind of employee and boss relationship.
Boss situation,
While as much as, and again, I worked in HR for years. So as much as, you know, you as the employee might be like, no, this is what I want and we're in love and whatever. You can never be 100% sure about this because there is always that dynamic of this person controls the responsibility of your job. And that's why we frown upon it. It's illegal, but stupid is what we call it in the HR world. It's not a good idea.
And I'm never a huge fan of like boss employee romances in general. Like I'm here for a good workplace romance. Like if people are like coworkers who are like competing for like the same promotion or something, like I'm here for it. But there's something about the boss employee relationship that's always kind of put me off in romance, like especially because of what you're saying, and just like there's always this different power dynamic from the like get-go that
it doesn't, like if they meet like Logan and whatever his name did before the like work relationship, like I don't seem to mind it then, because I think about myself all the time, like what if I met somebody and then I went to work with them and you know we become this power couple and we run the company. That's fine, like I don't mind that. But again, when it starts off as a boss underling situation, it's always thing. But my third thing was it's just pathetic because gross. Like you're 42 and you've literally fucked everyone out of their job. Like that's gross.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, I'm all for sexual liberation and doing what you want to do. But I mean, ew.
They never give you the details on that as much either too, because like I was expecting to hear a lot more about how, if that was the case, like had Dominic just like fucked all the assistants and they all quit, like, you know, because we don't really talk about that as much.
Yeah, it sounded like the ex-wife went on so many of these tours so he wouldn't do that, and he was still fucking her the whole time. So it was like,
I mean, this book does a lot with healing. This book, I feel like a main theme is healing and seeing what that looks like for different people, because you have Claire and you have Dominic, and Dominic hasn't even begun the healing process from something that happened 7 years ago, and he doesn't start it until the end when he does start going to therapy. Yeah, buddy. It's
like 8 minutes to the end of the book, though. You know, and
like, I started seeing someone, and she's like, "What?"
Oh.
He's like, "A therapist." She's like, "Oh, okay." Like,
good.
But
it's like you should phrase that better. And I like that she calls him on that too.
Yes.
She's like, that is the worst way to phrase that I have ever heard.
No, there's a lot I really liked about this book, but I do like that we get to see kind of like his healing process, which isn't healing, is, you know, he keeps going back to his ex-wife and like hooking up with her, and he's having these like random relationships. And even with Claire, like they both are like, look, I'm just out of a relationship. You clearly are angry with the world. Like, neither of us is in the place to be in a relationship. Like, let's just
He's so angry.
hook up,
Like,
we'll do our thing and then be done. And obviously, you know that like that's not going to be the end. But
of course,
I will say it did seem like a very healthy setup to have like a friends with benefits situation.
Well, they knew it
when
going
they
in.
started.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I liked that a lot. I don't know. There was just the more that I was reading it, I just feel like, oh, that's another thing I really like. Like, I love that they all get high and like hang out together and make s'mores. And I love that they have period sex and he's the one to initiate it because he's like, look, I'm a 42-year-old man. You think a little bit of blood bothers me? Like, I don't care. Right. I'm like, yeah, buddy. Okay. So, I mean, there's a lot going for this book.
It's one of those situations where you're like, okay, I like where this is going, but I have questions because there's a line in there where he's basically like, he's angry with her for making him want her. Like, it's a very, and this is in his head. He's not really said it out loud as much to her. But again, that's a very, like, that's a red flag. It's a little bit of a, that's concerning. Like, just from, you know, these different cultural situations where, you know, they're from different parts of the spectrum, and you know, having that power dynamic is a little weird. So, I mean, she seems into it, but she's also literally just came out of a relationship where her husband was overbearing and aggressive and then knocked the fuck out of her.
And he was the only man that she had been with. This is the other thing, is like she is figuring out what she likes, like while being with Dom. And so you're just like, oh, okay, like is this what you like, or are you just trying something out to like please your new partner sort of, you know, thing.
So that's the thing. It's she probably needs to talk to the therapist as well. It would be healthy. They could go to couples counseling and it's fine, because you can have whatever kink turns you on. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if she has no experience with it and she's still trying to figure things out, then it's a situation that has to be addressed. And I think the nice thing about it is that he is that way with her in that arena, but he's not cruel to her and he's not putting her down, and he's not only with her to show her off, like when it makes sense, and trying to get business deals. Like he's into her for her. Yeah. And the fact that she is who she is what he likes, as opposed to this is just another bimbo that's wandered onto the plane or whatever else. So
I think there are a lot of things in this that also go against the typical rock star romance tropes that if people who read rock star romance or who don't want to read rock star romance because of like, oh, I don't want to see them like go out and partying all the time and like hooking up with random people and treating women like commodities. And, you know, you don't get that in this book. Like, it's very much like when he's done with his show, and we don't spend a lot of time at the shows. Like, it's very much like she watches him a couple times. He sings a song that she loves of his, and we find out like the meaning behind it and why it's important to each of them. But he goes back to like his hotel or the house that he rented. Like, he does not want to be in the public sphere. He's like, look, I can't even take you out to like a restaurant, like, because it would be a lot of trouble for all of us. Like, and so we don't see a lot of the usual stuff in it's not that instead of them going out to bars and like, you know, being very like aggressive with other people, it's them hanging out on a rooftop, eating edibles and making s'mores, which I'm just like, damn, maybe we just need to have more older rock stars in romance for me to get this experience. Like, because I was really into everything that they were doing. And then on top of him being like aggressive in bed, he's also very caring, even as like an angry kind of standoffish guy. Like, he's always like checking in with her and like making sure, you know, she's okay. And like he puts her to bed. He's like, I can't have sex with you when you're high. Like, I can't. Yeah. Even if you were just like a little bit high, I still couldn't do it. Like, I'm just gonna put you into bed. Like, I mean, it's a lot of like all of that caring, you know, aftercare that you would expect to see in like a dom sub relationship that we are seeing. And it's not that they even have a dom sub relationship. But I liked seeing that part of his personality as well, of him not just being like the cocky, angry rock star that like is tired of the fame or whatever. Like there's actually more to him than that, which I don't think we get in a lot of rock star romances.
Yeah, and I think I don't usually read a lot. Like I've said, I've read the Soul Serenade series and I loved it. And I think it's in the same vein where you kind of get to, and those guys weren't even that old. They were in their probably early 30s, I think, but they had done the rock star life. They had done the promiscuous thing. And it had gotten old. And they're like, we're tired of the touring. We want families. We've got these big ass houses. We want to have fun and we want to barbecue and we want to make a shit ton of money doing the thing that we love. Let's start a record label. Our wives can be a part of it. Oops, stalker. Like it's so, and I'm with you. Like it needs, I like when the romance happens pretty quick. Or sometimes yes and no. There still has to be conflict. I read one that was apparent. I didn't realize was like a novella or something or just a little short. And I was like, they got together in like chapter 2 and then it was like us against the world, but the world wasn't all that interesting. It was like,
and then it was over.
And I was like, oh, so maybe I don't like it that quick, but I also don't like it when we're 3/4 of the way through the book and like we haven't gotten anywhere, or when I pick the real wrong one and get all the way to the end to get a kiss. And I'm like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, that's happened in too many holiday romances.
All of them. I'm like, okay, listen, Lifetime movie. Put it on the cover. Let me know. Like,
well, we get a lot more than a kiss at the end in this book. So this is the part of the show where I will happily ask you if you have a sexcerpt that you would like to discuss and or read aloud for the class here. And there's a lot
to
choose from. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I personally have always been a fan of the morning cuddles leading to things because that's nice. I like that. So this is basically chapter 21 for me is Claire's point of view.
Okay.
I don't know how long you usually read these things. Like,
you read however much you want to read, Liz.
I'll probably go until her pussy gets hungry for his cock here.
Oh, okay. It's getting greedy.
Yeah, it's getting greedy. So she says, I woke up wet and hot. I'd been dreaming of Dominic, his cock between my thighs, rubbing my clit again and again. It's no wonder my panties were soaked. Last night, I'd have been embarrassed and hurt Dominic didn't want to have sex. This is after the edibles. With me once again, confused too, that he wanted me in his bed anyway. This morning, with my head a little clearer, I remembered how achingly hard he had been, the struggle in his every move to chain back his reactions to me. He wanted me as much as I wanted him. When I moved, the arm around my middle tightened, holding me in place. In his sleep, Dominic shushed me, petting my stomach, then moving to cut my breast. I couldn't stop myself from whimpering and feeling the feel of his rough fingertips grazing my skin that had only ever been touched this way by one man. Dominic groaned in his sleep and pressed his growing erection between my ass cheeks. My spine bowed, nestling his cock even closer. Claire. His growl. I can only hear it as a growl. His beard scratched my shoulder as his name left my mouth like sandpaper. Dominic, I whispered, reaching behind me to cup his tightly muscled ass. Good morning. I'm going to stop here because it takes a little longer to get into the action, but I really dug this. I like this wake up the morning, like we're doing the thing. But then again, the way she writes, there's a couple little words that I probably would have written a little differently to keep the flow. I reached back and grabbed his ass. It's like,
grab that ass.
I mean, I'm down for it, what's happening, but again, my brain just pops out of it. But again, I really like this. I like the morning stuff scene.
So I love that scene too. Let me give you something different, which I will say again, it's not necessarily like my personal preference. Like this wouldn't be like the scene that I'm like, oh my God, I wish this happened to me. But yeah. I can see where people might like this because this is like more of a public atmosphere. Yeah. They're in the bathroom at a restaurant and he is like, I want you to go into the restaurant, like take your panties off kind of thing. And so when they get into the restaurant, I'll go from, this is from Dominic's point of view. I gripped her waist, backing her into the counter. Now you spread your legs for me. People will hear. Even as she protested, she lifted her dress. I snagged her panties and held them up to her mouth. You don't want anyone to hear? Then you'll have to be quiet. If you don't think you can, open those pretty lips for me. Gliding my hand up the inside of her silky soft thigh, I squeezed and pinched. Pinched? What is he, a lobster? Until I found her heated center. Oh, there's another word.
Do you have
center? I gotta pinch.
Now I'm the lobster claw all the way up. Like, where is it? It's in the middle.
Gotta find that center.
For the center. You don't have to go up the side. It's right there.
2 fingers dipping into her wetness was all it took for her to moan, opening those lips for me just like I asked. I stuffed the lacy fabric into her mouth, then fell to my knees in front of her. Claire had been driving me crazy all night, so this wasn't for her. I'd eat her pussy out, have her moaning my name, and it would be all for me. She could come, but it would be my orgasm. So again, not necessarily like for me, but right. I'm like, okay, points for creativity. Like I'm just like, look, we got some period sex, we've got some morning sex, we've got shower sex, we've got lots public sex in the bathroom, lots of oral. He is always going down on her and also doing it from different directions, because that's where my mind would start playing Twister. I'm like, wait, which direction is she facing? Like,
and every time somebody does this where they drop to the knees in front of somebody, again, I'm like, growing, I've been a plus size girl my whole life, so I'm also going, like how far back is she? Like, again, it's again, like, what's the logistics here? Is she on the counter? Because that would make more sense. Like, just pop her. Like, yeah. So, again, and unfortunately, like, when it's written really, really well, and I'm in it. Like, the whole thing is there. But when the logistics are popping out, I do get a little.
Right.
How did that? And she's got her own panties in her mouth.
Yep. And to me, it's a no-go. Like, I'm
like, I don't want that. That does not sound sexy to me.
No, and if you want to gag somebody, fine. But I'm like, with their own
with my
panties.
That I've been wearing. Like,
yes. Which are clearly going to be wet because, like, she's talking about how turned on she is.
Yeah. Like,
and it's hot.
So. Like, there's logistical issues that I'm like, okay, any other thing could have been the napkin from the table. Like, there's things that could have been his shirt or anything. But
if you can turn your brain off and ignore these things while reading, it's all
fantastic.
The power to you. Like, but some of us aren't as blessed with that nozzle to just switch on and off. So, we don't all have it, but anyway, but you can see, obviously there are a lot of sexy scenes. There's a little bit of something for everybody. So, I think this would appeal.
I did like the book. Like, I did really enjoy reading it. I actually read it in the evenings after we like shut down after our convention that we just went to. It's like my husband was asleep. We always get the 2 beds because I like more pillows and space and shit.
Amen.
Like, I like my own sleep space. But I was just like reading this book till like 3:00 in the morning, and I did it the next night. And I was like, I texted you. I was like, I have things to say, but I would probably read more. There's something that happened. I think it's that same restaurant when they're in the one that Isabella comes back later and says, "Oh, he takes all his girls there," or some shitty catty
gross
thing. But he is listening to her laugh or talk or something, and I just love this line so much, and I just had to point it out. It's like her throaty laugh sounded like the devil's church bells calling all the sinners to service. It's like, what a great fucking line. Like, I love that. That's amazing.
There's a lot about like good versus bad. Like, she's good and he doesn't want to taint her, and she even tells him like the night that she was drunk and like propositioned him, like, she's like, I just wanted to be bad. Like, I wanted to be bad for once. And like, so I mean, it's got that sort of thing. If it's like, you want the like good girl, bad boy, but he's not, it's not that he's bad, but you know, just that vibe, then I think you'll like it. But yeah, there was something that really appealed to me about this book. Like, so much so that I wish this was a series. I don't think it is.
Oh, I thought it was.
Maybe
I'm hoping maybe it will be.
Maybe it will be. But I definitely want to
text
read
her and tell her
more Julia
Yeah.
Wolf, like after having read this. So I would recommend this one for sure.
Is this, do you know, is this like a debut for her? Does she have, I don't, like I said, she's new for me, so I don't know if she has other books out.
Yeah, she definitely has like a lot more books. And like just judging by the titles she's got, ones that are part of series, I see at least like 3 series with like multiple books in them. I don't know what they're about, but
Right.
I
It would
will
be
happily
interesting to
check
read
them out.
Yeah, some of the others to kind of see how they play out in other situations, because this one, like you said, this one feels very like current, very now, and it's definitely hitting a lot of the things you see on TikTok and the things that are happening with consent and the things that are happening with people being more like one of the things that I keep seeing on TikTok is so much more body positivity, and people are like, fuck you and my, I'm going to keep my fupa out and my thiupa, and I'm going to wear the bikini even though it's going to gross. I don't care. I'm not there yet, but I want to be. Like, my brain wants to be there, where it's like, fuck it, just wear what you want. Like, and I really like that there is so much more plus size inclusivity, and guys are like, oh, hell no, I don't want a person that's 140 pounds because they're still a child or whatever it is. And it's like, it's nice to see that, though that has not necessarily been my personal experience with dating, but I also haven't dated in more than a decade. So it's kind of a...
lucky you. I'm having like a major moment here because I'm realizing that this was not my first Julia Wolf book. Like I thought it was, but we actually read a Hanukkah novella by Julia Wolf for the 12 Days of Boobsmas a couple of years ago, called 8 Cozy Nights. And I remember reading this book, and you know what? I remember liking this one because I want to say it was like a really cool character setup. Like the woman was a like curvy tattoo artist, and the guy, like, I just remember the guy riding a bicycle. I don't know why that's like what stood out to me, but the whole advertising for it was like, if you like Hallmark movies but like you wish it was like a little sexier, and obviously they're celebrating Hanukkah, so there you go. I completely forgot, which makes me want to go back and read that book and check out the series that book is a part of, because I know that's part of a series that I hadn't
it's like book
read.
5. I just looked at it.
Yeah,
So
I had only read the
5.
holiday novella. So so clearly, 2 for 2 as far as I'm concerned with Julia Wolf. And I'm excited to read more. I wanted to write another Hanukkah book. We don't
see a lot of them.
We don't have enough of them.
I can clearly I don't think I've ever read a Hanukkah. I've read books that have Hanukkah in them from time to time, but I don't think I've ever read one that was specific to Hanukkah.
Girl, we will circle back in November, December, and we will hook you up.
I am interested.
In the meantime, let's give this book a few ratings and wrap her up. So, Built to Fall by Julia Wolf, we are going to be rating for heart, humor, and heat on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be. So, Liz, I will turn it over to you. Let's start with heart. What do we think?
With the heart on this one, I think, because again, there's a lot of growth and there's a lot of kindness and aftercare and things like that we've talked about. I think I'm going to give it maybe like do you do halves? Like maybe an 8 to 9. I'll give it like an 8.5. Yeah, like an 8.5, I think. I think some of the execution was not as close in my mind as where it could have been, but I think the intent is there, and that's important. So
yeah, I'm with you. I gave it an 8. And I also liked a lot of the relationships that were happening, like between, Claire and her sister Annalise, and Annalise and Marta eventually get together and move in together after like a month or two.
The sister dynamic reminds me of me and my sister, because my sister is my best friend, and so she calls her. She's like, "Hey, whore." She's like, "You have no idea." She's like, "You fucked him." Yeah, it's like, "Oh yeah," because that's 100% how like adult sisters can talk, and it's awesome. Like I love that dynamic and relationship where you don't have to be like, "Oh my goodness." So I like that.
It's a small thing that, I mean, really it's a big thing, but it's worth noting, just even if it's brief, but there's so many authors out there who are like, I don't know how to add more diversity to my books without like speaking for somebody that's like not my voice. Like, I don't want to, as a cisgendered heterosexual white woman, write the perspective of like a queer Black woman. Like, and I respect that. However, this book is a great example of incorporating characters who have their own stories, who have their own meanings and purposes that aren't just to further the love
couple.
story, like that they have their own stories, and they also can be queer and they can be not white. Like, I mean, so I think this is a great example of a successful way to do that. Yeah. So take note to, anybody wanting to incorporate that into their books. But anyway, from heart to humor, what do we think? Haha.
I found a lot of haha, but it was more like, oh my God, what the
Not
fuck?
intentional haha. It was like,
I don't
I'm
think
going
it
to
was
eat you
intentional.
raw haha.
It was that. It was like, she's blending in with the sofa. Haha, fucking whore. So I would say from the capacity that it took me out of the seriousness of whatever the story was, I would give it like let's say 6.
Yeah, I don't think it's not meant to be like hilarious. Like, I will say, I think Marta and Annalise add a lot of like, and the guys from the other band that they're touring with, like, they give you like those more comical one-liner silly moments, like which is fine. I mean, that's totally fine. I love the scene where they get high and they make s'mores. I think great. That is funny and wonderful.
I love the little brother guy, Rodrigo. Was that his name?
Rodrigo.
He was I kind of forget about him. He's like, oh, baby, and she's like, I'm older than you. He's like, no, you're precious, you're little, you're adorable.
You the baby.
That's 100% like my favorite character in real life.
I think for humor, I probably would give it like 6.5. Like, it's I don't think it's meant to be funny, but it's also not like a tearful book. Like, there were definitely certain lines where I'd be like, oh, that's cute. Like, okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, again, it's not laugh out loud rom-com, but I found it entertaining. So how about the heat? Because I feel like there's
a lot of good sexy time in this book.
Steam central.
I actually looked it up, and it does start like right at the 50% mark on the book. So at least we're sooner than some.
And there's a lot of like good flirtation leading up to that. There's some sexy texting. Like,
oh, I like that. That was nice. So again, I'm not going to give it like a 9-10, but I'll go with an 8. Like, it because again, some of the writing kind of pulled me out of it and the logistical.
Yeah, that's
stuff.
fair.
But again, there was enough of it. I wasn't like Susan Hatlering the whole thing where the whole thing is leading to a goddamn kiss. And I'm like, go fucking
This one's a hard one because in terms of like heat, this is definitely like one of the higher heats that I've read in the last few months. But measuring it up against books that I've given like a 10 to in the past, I don't think it would necessarily be a 10. I think I would give it a 9 though, because I do think there's a lot of sexy things happening. There's a good variety, lots of locations. We definitely get the messy sex with the period sex that I'm always craving. So,
I think if he growled more than bit, I think I would have gone a little bit higher.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of the biting. Like, it was gratuitous. It was gratuitous biting.
There was a lot of, and again, I don't have any problem with the aggressive and whatever, but there was a lot of like grabbing and pulling and again, that has a time and place, but also her just coming out of this weird, and he didn't know also for a good ways through the book. It was like 3/4. It wasn't until pot time and s'mores night that he even found out that she had been married and was going through a divorce and had been abused. So he even and then that's the night he won't sleep with her, and he's like checking in and doing all the things, and that was a really good adjustment on that. But I think a lot of it just like I like a good handhold or a neck grab or whatever, but again, there was just so much of it at like and it kind of just got like, I'm worried for her. Like,
I have a time and a place, like, and it's, oh golly. But yeah, so overall, I think I would have given the heat a 9 though. And I do think there's a lot there. There's really I really do like this, but like this is one that I'll
Yeah.
hang on to, and I do think I'll reread this one, and I might pass this along to like a few friends who want to read it. So, you know, of the ones that I've read in the last couple months, this is definitely a fave, and I'm excited to read more Julia Wolf, and I'm going to hope maybe Julia didn't have a series planned for this, and maybe this podcast episode will inspire her to. Like I don't know. Like I want to read Rodrigo's story. I want to read
I want Rodrigo's story and the other guy. Yeah, the mystery guy.
The mystery guy. Like and
I want to read where Adam becomes not a dick. I would like the one where he realizes that was such a mistake. Yeah, exactly.
And we've seen that in romance. I feel like I've been talking about this with a few authors in interviews lately, is sort of like the redemption story for like the villain. And it's not to say that Adam's a villain, but that he's like the douche nozzle that just like can't take a hint kind of thing. But you know, that's very much the typical rock star too. In rock star romances, like the flirts with everybody, thinks they can have anyone. So I could even see him having a story. So I'm here for it. Like I am here for more people from this book finding their own romances.
And that's the thing. Like I liked all of the ancillary characters in this book.
Yeah.
Except for Isabella. Like, she's the one I would like to punch in the face because she's just an ass. And she's like, I can't believe I said that. I'm so down for empowering women at work. I'm like, no you're not. You 100% hired this girl so she would not sleep with your ex-husband. That is not empowering women at work. No. That is sexualizing women at work, even if it's in the opposite direction. Like, that is not okay.
He also calls her a cunt, like, multiple times. He's like, that's, like, pretty cunt thing to say. I'm like, yep, there, call it what it is. Like,
it's true. I mean, I know people hate that word, but you know what? It just applies sometimes. And it's not even, like, a icky word, you know?
There you go. Oh, man. Well, I'm so excited that we finally found the time to record together.
Thank you for having me. It's amazing.
Yes, of course. You are always welcome back.
Anytime you need me back, I am here, and I have suggestions if you haven't read some, and I know I'm going to be asking you. I always feel bad when I'm like, hey, help me with a suggestion. I need to read something new.
Oh, no. I'm here for it.
I want to get from you, when you have time, are some romance novels written by men. Because there's a lot of them that I read that are written by women, but they're written by women trying to sound like they're writing like a man sometimes, and it's very weird. So
there is definitely.
I'd like to read some that actually are.
And they're out there, and I can think of like a few authors. In fact, just like off the top of my head, and I'm part of a few different like book groups. Like the Nerdy Bitches like book club group and everything, but. I'm part of another one on Facebook where we actually we pick a different like book club theme every month, and the one we picked for this upcoming month. So. Are you? Yeah, and I
think you had me the other day. Yeah,
but we chose a romance written by a man, like, and so people were like throwing out different ideas. So they're definitely there. I am happy to hook you up. Cool. Maybe we'll do like a little bonus episode or something that's like specifically highlighting romances written by men.
Well, and that's the thing. Like Heather and I find a lot of, and it's not like a book we've read. We find a lot of memes and we find a lot of different things that are very clearly either fully written by a man or it's a satire of how men describe women in books.
Yes,
like how aware we are in life of our nipples. Mine must be broken because I don't have a very close relationship, nor do I know when they are erect all the time.
They're pebbling. They're pebbling against your shirt.
They're poking through my shirt. They are pointing at attention, and I'm like,
you're also beautiful, but you don't know it. Like you're such a beauty, and you have no idea. But watch this.
You and I are on video. Watch this. Do you want to see me get more beautiful?
Yeah. Oh my God, she took her glasses off, everybody. Like she is a treasure.
Fucking fox right now because I'm not wearing glasses. It's like every bad teen movie ever written about a makeover for a girl who was totally fine on her own. We do 2 theme months a year. One in April for Heather's birthday and one in September for mine.
Perfect.
So we have done things in the past like Mean Girls, Shark Month, Bat Month, like, we cover the things. So last month, for April, we did Keanu Weeks, where we covered.
Yes, I remember.
They were amazing. So we're going a slightly different route in September, and we are doing what I am calling Goot Timber, where we are going to focus on the best of Steve Guttenberg's filmography because I love him. And it's going to be amazing and maybe ridiculous. And I'm down for it. So
is Little Giants on the list? Or no, not
It's
Little
not,
Giants.
no.
The one, what's the one with the kids who play soccer and like there's a goat, the big green.
Yeah, no, it's not. I actually have done several of these movies with Everything I Learned from Movies.
Okay.
So we did Zeus and Roxanne, which is the one where I realized I was like, he's actually kind of like hot. Like, what is happening with this guy and his abs? They're amazing. But then we did with them The Man Who Wasn't There from the 80s. I don't know if you've seen this one.
I haven't.
Takes a potion and becomes sort of invisible, and you get to see his butt and kind of his balls and some of it. And it's a little bit like, what the fuck? It's so 80s.
Oh my God.
Spy movie ridiculous that it is fabulous. It is so terrible. It's fabulous. I think it's on Amazon Prime. If you ever want to watch it, it's ridiculous.
So where can everybody find and follow Nerdy Bitches and listen to all of the Goot-tember episodes to come?
Yeah, you can find Nerdy Bitches everywhere on the internet. You just type it in. We're there. But like on Twitter, we are at Nerdy Bitches Pod. You can find us on Instagram at Nerdy Bitches. We signed up back in the day before everybody knew to just make the same thing everywhere, but fine. You can also find us on any of your podcast apps, Nerdy Bitches Podcast, and then at nerdybitches.com, you can find our entire library of all the things. And I'm hoping like you can actually see where we are guesting on other shows. You can see all of our book club selections are listed there, have links to those episodes as well, which is great. And then me personally, you can follow on pretty much all of the apps, the Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at author Liz Serna, Serna, because I'm working on building up my little platform there. So if anybody wants to go follow and see my my weirdo sense of humor all the time and weird shit I've got going on. And my TikTok is at Nerdy B Liz. So like Nerdy Bitch Liz. So
it's the perfect blend of all your
the
things.
things. I like to have a hub. I'm building a website for all the things. You can find Self-Saving Princess there. It's elizabethserna.com.
All the places. Well, yay. Well, I, for one, am looking forward to your book whenever it does come out. And in the meantime, we have plenty of other romance and nerdy things we can talk about. So this is just the start. Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Newbies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Newbies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.